The night was unusually silent as Danielle climbed into bed, her mind still racing from the day's chaos at the art gallery. She sighed, looking forward to the comfort of her bed, a place that had always felt like a refuge from the world's noise. But tonight, something felt off. She slipped under the sheets, the silk cool against her skin, a small comfort for her tired body. As she reached over to turn off the light, her hand brushed against something. Pausing, she picked up a long, black hair. It lay stark against her pale hand, unmistakably not hers. Her own hair was a vibrant auburn, and Willie's was a light, sandy colour, kept neatly trimmed and nowhere near long enough to be mistaken for the strand she now held between her fingers. "Willie," she called out softly, hoping he might still be awake. But only the gentle hum of the city answered back. He was probably still out with his friends. The hair twisted between her fingers as she turned it over, her heart sinking with each pulse. She climbed out of bed, restless. The apartment was quiet, too quiet, with only the dim light of the street lamps casting shadows across the room. She wandered into the kitchen, her mind buzzing with the worst scenarios. The faint smell of Willie's cologne lingered in the air, mixed with something else, something floral and unfamiliar. Turning on the light, she noticed that everything was too neat, too in its place, which was unlike Willie. He was many things, but meticulous wasn't one of them. Since when did he start cleaning up like this? She muttered to herself, her voice a mix of confusion and suspicion. The clean counters, the organised magazines, even the dishes neatly stacked, it all seemed staged, like a scene from someone else's life. Each detail added weight to the dread building in her chest. She paced back to the bedroom, her thoughts racing. "This can't be happening," she whispered to herself, replaying the evening in her mind. Had there been signs she missed? Had Willie's smiles been a bit too forced lately? His excuses a little too convenient? Frustrated and unsure, Danielle sat on the edge of the bed, the black hair still clutched in her hand. She laid it down on the nightstand, a dark reminder of her growing doubts. Finally, with a deep breath, she dialed Willie's number. The phone rang, cutting through the silence of the room, each tone sharp against the soft hiss of the night air through the open window. "Hey, babe. What's up?" Willie's voice was cheerful, oblivious to the storm brewing on the other end of the line. Danielle hesitated, her throat tight. "Hey, when are you coming home?" Her voice was a mix of hope and fear, a delicate balance she wasn't sure she could maintain. "Soon, just wrapping up here." "You okay?" There was genuine concern in his voice now. "Yeah, just tired, I guess. See you soon." She hung up before he could ask anything more. She wasn't ready to confront him, not yet. She needed to be sure, to see his face when she asked about the hair. Lying back down, Danielle stared at the ceiling, the black hair casting a shadow far larger than its physical size. Tonight, the bed felt less like a refuge and more like a battlefield, and she was lying right in the middle of it. Danielle stepped out of the taxi and onto the familiar sidewalk leading up to their apartment building. Her handbag felt unusually heavy as she fumbled for her keys, her heart hammering against her ribs. As she approached the door, the memories of finding the black hair the night before returned, gnawing at her peace. She opened the door slowly, half expecting to find something or someone that would confirm her fears. Instead, she was greeted by the comforting aroma of garlic and rosemary wafting through the apartment. The place was spotless, the floors gleamed, and there was a gentle hum of a vacuum cleaner in the background which cut off abruptly as she closed the door behind her. "Willie," she called out, her voice echoing slightly against the walls of the immaculate living room. There was a shuffling sound, and then Willie appeared from the kitchen, wearing an apron and a wide smile. "Hey, babe. You're home early," he said, walking over to give her a quick kiss on the cheek. "Hope you're hungry. I'm trying out that new roast recipe we saw on TV last week." Danielle forced a smile, her eyes scanning the room. "Yeah, looks like you've been busy," she remarked, setting her bag down and looking around. "The place looks different." Willie chuckled, wiping his hands on his apron. "Yeah, had a burst of energy. Thought I'd surprise you. Plus, Mum's been on my case about keeping the place tidy." Her mind latched onto the mention of his mother, but the seed of suspicion wouldn't quite let go. "Your mum, huh? Has she been over today?" Danielle asked, trying to sound casual as she glanced towards the bedroom hallway. "No, not today." "Why?" Missing her delightful commentary on our decor, Willie joked, leading her towards the kitchen. As they entered the kitchen, Danielle noticed everything was in perfect order. The countertops were clear except for a chopping board laden with herbs and a couple of pots bubbling away on the stove. Willie lifted the lid on one, and a cloud of savoury steam filled the room. "Smells amazing," Danielle admitted, though her compliment was tinged with distraction. She perched on a stool at the counter, watching as Willie began to chop some vegetables. "You seem in a good mood," she observed. "Yeah, had a good day. Plus, cooking relaxes me," Willie replied, focused on his task. "How was your day? Anything interesting happen at the gallery?" "Usual stuff." "Nothing as exciting as what I came home to," she said, her words carrying a double meaning. Willie paused, looking up with a slight frown. "You sure everything's okay? You seem a bit off." "Just tired." I guess Danielle shrugged, avoiding his gaze. "It's been a long day." "Well, dinner will be ready soon. Why don't you go relax? Take a bath or something? I've got this under control," Willie suggested warmly, giving her a reassuring smile. Danielle nodded, sliding off the stool. "Maybe I will." "Thanks, Willie." As she walked toward the bathroom, her mind raced. The cleanliness, the cooking, his cheery demeanor, it all seemed too perfect, too timed. But there was nothing tangible she could point to, just a gut feeling that something was amiss. She passed the bedroom, pausing at the door. With a deep breath, she stepped inside, her eyes immediately scanning the room, half expecting to find another clue, another betrayal. But there was nothing, just the neatly made bed and the faint scent of Willie's cologne mingling with the rosemary from the kitchen. As the tub filled with warm water, the soothing sound did little to calm the storm of doubts in her mind. The bath hadn't done much to ease Danielle's restless thoughts. Wrapped in a fluffy towel, she stood at the threshold of their bedroom, her eyes scanning the neatly made bed where she had found the black hair the night before. With a sigh, she approached the bed, her hands almost trembling as she began to sift through the sheets methodically. "This is crazy," she muttered to herself, feeling the weight of each movement. She lifted the corner of the mattress, half expecting to see nothing, half hoping to find something that would make sense of her tangled emotions. There it was again, an unmistakable long, black strand stark against the white of their sheets. Willie, her voice was louder this time, laced with a tightness that betrayed her attempt at calm. In the living room, Willie, hearing the strain in her voice, paused his tidying up. "Yeah, babe." "Everything okay?" he called back, already moving toward the bedroom. "No, not really," Danielle responded, holding up the strand of hair for him to see as he entered the room. Her voice wavered. "This isn't mine, Willie." Willie's face changed, confusion giving way to concern as he took a step closer. "Okay, let's not jump to conclusions here. It's just a hair," he said, trying to keep his voice even, though his eyes avoided hers. "Just a hair?" "Just like the one from last night." Danielle's voice rose slightly, her frustration bubbling over. "It's not mine, Willie. And unless you've taken to wearing wigs when I'm not around, it's not yours either." Willie rubbed the back of his neck, looking genuinely puzzled. "I don't know, Dani. Maybe it's from a friend or someone at work. You know how people come in and out all day?" Danielle shook her head, her arms crossed defensively. "Don't treat me like I'm overreacting. Friends don't typically wander into our bedroom and shed hair on our bed." Willie sighed, his expression softening. "You're right, I'm sorry. I don't know what you want me to say. I'm as clueless about this as you are." His sincerity seemed genuine, but it did little to quell the storm of doubt in Danielle's heart. "I need to understand where this is coming from, Willie. We need to figure this out," she insisted, her voice a mix of pleading and insistence. Willie nodded slowly, his eyes meeting hers finally. "Okay, we'll figure it out. Let's just not let this get the best of us, okay? I love you, Danielle. There's no one else." Danielle wanted to believe him, to throw her arms around him and forget the black hair ever existed. but as much as she wanted to trust his words, the presence of something so inexplicably out of place lodged a wedge of doubt that couldn't be easily removed. She nodded, not quite ready to speak, her eyes lingering on the strand of hair still clutched in her fingers. "Let's just keep looking," Willie said after a moment of heavy silence, his voice hopeful yet tinged with unease. "Maybe there's a reasonable explanation for all this." As they both turned to scrutinize the room once more, the tension lingered, a silent third presence that neither of them could quite shake off. That night, the dinner table was an island of awkward silence. Danielle picked at her food, her mind churning with images of the black hair she had discovered earlier. Across from her, Willie seemed to sense her unease, casting tentative glances her way as he too barely touched his meal. "Danny, you've hardly eaten anything." Willie finally broke the silence, his voice laced with concern. "Is it the food? Or are you still upset about the hair?" Danielle set her fork down with a clatter, her appetite lost to the gnawing suspicion. "I'm sorry, Willie. It's not the food. I just can't stop thinking about it. It's like there's this constant buzz in my head, and I can't turn it off." Willie reached across the table, attempting to offer comfort with his touch. "I get it, I really do. But you know you can trust me, right? Whatever this is, we'll sort it out together." Pulling her hand back, Danielle sighed, her frustration evident. "I want to believe you, Willie, I do. But how can I just ignore this? It's not just the hair, it's how everything seems so orchestrated, like you're trying too hard to cover something up." "Cover something up?" "Danny, come on." Willie's voice rose slightly, a mix of hurt and defensiveness edging in. "I cleaned up because I wanted to do something nice for you. Since when is that a crime?" It's not that at all." Danielle's voice softened, her eyes meeting his, filled with confusion and pain. "It's just that everything feels off, and I hate that I'm even thinking like this, but I can't help it." Willie let out a deep breath, his shoulders slumping as if the weight of her words physically pressed down on him. "Look, I hate that you're feeling this way. I hate it. But you have to believe me, there's nothing going on. Maybe we could talk to someone. A counselor or something." Danielle considered this, the idea of bringing an outsider into their personal turmoil initially bristling against her pride. But then, looking into Willie's earnest eyes, desperate for a way to bridge the gap between them, she nodded slowly. "Maybe you're right. Maybe that would help." The rest of the meal passed in a somber truce, both of them lost in their own thoughts, the chasm of doubt and fear widening silently between them. Later, as they lay in bed, the distance was palpable. Danielle turned away from Willie, staring at the shadowed ceiling, her mind replaying every word, every gesture from the past few weeks, searching for a clue, any clue, that might explain the unsettling feeling that had taken root in her heart. Willie, feeling the cold space where their bodies used to meet with warmth, whispered into the darkness, "Danielle, whatever it takes, I'm here. We'll get through this." Danielle's response was a quiet, "I hope so, Willie." "I really do," but as she closed her eyes, the shadows seemed to press closer, and the buzz in her mind grew louder, the doubts not so easily silenced. The tension had built up like static, crackling silently between Danielle and Willie as they moved around their apartment, both acutely aware of the unresolved suspicions hanging in the air. Danielle had spent the afternoon flipping through old photos, the memories bringing both warmth and a piercing sting of doubt. Each smile from Willie in those pictures now seemed to carry a shadow she hadn't noticed before. As Willie walked in from his Tuesday night basketball, the sound of the door closing echoed like a starting bell for what Danielle had been dreading all day. His footsteps approached, light and unsuspecting. As he entered the living room, a slight sweat on his brow from the game. "Hey, Danny, you wouldn't believe the game tonight." Willie started with a weary but genuine smile, unaware of the storm brewing inside her. Jackson finally made that half-court shot he's been bragging about. "Who were you really with last Tuesday?" Danielle cut him off, her voice sharper than she intended, her eyes fixed intensely on his. Willie's smile faded, replaced by a look of confusion. "What? Babe, I was at the game, like every Tuesday. You know that." Danielle shook her head, stepping closer, her voice trembling with a mix of anger and fear. "Don't. Just don't, Willie." I called the gym last week. They said there was a plumbing issue and all activities were cancelled. So where were you really? Willie's expression shifted from confusion to shock, then to a defensive tightness around his eyes. We played at the park. I didn't think it mattered where we played. Why would you even call the gym? It matters when I find strange hairs in our bed. Willie Danielle's voice broke slightly, revealing the depth of her distress. It matters when my husband lies about where he's been. Danielle, I swear it was just a last-minute change. Jackson texted everyone to meet at the park instead. I'm not lying to you, Willie pleaded, his voice earnest, desperate to bridge the rapidly widening gap between them. Show me the texts, then Danielle demanded, her arms crossed, her stance resolute. Willie pulled out his phone, his fingers fumbling slightly as he scrolled through his messages. Here, see. Jackson's message about the change. He handed the phone to her, his brow furrowed in frustration and worry. Danielle stared at the screen, the glow casting shadows on her face as she read the messages. Her shoulders slumped slightly, a mix of relief and residual suspicion lingering. Okay, I see it. But Willie, can you see why I'd be worried? Everything feels off. And these hairs, they're not mine. Willie took a deep breath, running his hands through his hair, a gesture of frustration and fatigue. I get it, I do. And I'm sorry I didn't tell you about the change in plans. I didn't think it was a big deal. But there's nothing going on, Dani. You have to believe me. Danielle handed the phone back, her expression softening but her eyes still troubled. I want to believe you, Willie. I really do. It's just all these little things adding up. It's hard. Let's find the source of these hairs, then Willie suggested, a tone of determination underlining his words. Let's really look together. Whatever it takes to prove to you there's nothing to worry about. I love you, Danielle, more than anything. Danielle nodded, a fragile smile tugging at her lips. I love you too. Let's figure this out together. The night ended not with accusations but with a mutual promise to seek out the truth, whatever it might be. As they went to bed, the distance between them felt a little less cold, a little more like the bridge they were trying to build back to each other. The morning light filtered through the curtains, casting a soft glow across the room where Danielle and Willie had finally found some uneasy sleep after their agreement to solve the mystery together. But the serenity of the morning was short-lived. Danielle was in the kitchen, pouring coffee, when she heard the front door open unexpectedly. She stiffened, her first thought being Willie, but he was still in the shower. Heart pounding, she set down the coffee pot and walked toward the entrance. Willie, is that you? Her voice wavered as she rounded the corner, only to stop dead in her tracks. There, dusting off her hands as she closed the door behind her, was Missis Doris, Willie's mother. She looked up, her new black hair strikingly different from the salt and pepper look she'd always had. Danielle, darling, didn't mean to startle you. I came to drop off some of Willie's old things from the attic, and, well, I thought I'd surprise you both. Missis Doris beamed, oblivious to the tension her presence brought. Danielle blinked, taken aback not only by the surprise visit but also by the hair. Missis Doris, your hair, it's different. Oh, this Missis Doris laughed, fluffing her dark locks. Yes, decided it was time for a change. Do you like it? Before Danielle could respond, Willie came out of the shower, towel drying his hair. He paused, seeing his mother. Mom? What are you doing here so early? Just dropping some things off, honey. But I see I've caused a bit of a stir. Missis Doris glanced between them, her expression turning concerned. Is everything all right here? Willie exchanged a look with Danielle, who nodded slightly, giving him the go-ahead to explain. Mum, we've been having a bit of trouble. Willie started, choosing his words carefully. Danielle found some black hairs in our bed, and, well, we couldn't figure out where they came from. Missis Doris's eyes widened, a hand flying to her mouth. Oh my, that's my fault. I've been here a few times when you both were out, thought I'd help by doing some cleaning and maybe surprised you. I must have left some hairs behind. This new dye is quite a shedder. She chuckled nervously, not fully grasping the gravity of the situation. Danielle felt a mixture of relief and absurdity wash over her. Wait, so the hairs were yours. Yes, dear. I'm so sorry for the confusion. Willie, I should have told you I was coming by. Didn't think it'd be an issue. Missis Doris looked genuinely apologetic. Willie shook his head, a small smile breaking through his earlier tension. It's okay, Mum. We just wish you had told us. Turning to Danielle, Willie reached for her hand. See, I told you there was an explanation. Danielle nodded, her relief palpable, but her emotions were a tangled web of joy and residual anxiety. I'm sorry for doubting you, Willie. No, I'm sorry this caused so much stress. Mom, maybe a heads up next time, Willie said, half jokingly. Missis Doris nodded, her tone earnest. Of course, my dear. I'll make sure to call ahead, and maybe switch to a less dramatic hair colour, she added with a laugh, breaking the remaining tension in the room. As they all sat down to discuss over coffee, the morning took on a lighter tone, the shadows of doubt slowly clearing as the sun climbed higher in the sky. As they gathered around the kitchen table with fresh cups of coffee, the atmosphere began to relax a bit, though Danielle still felt a whirl of emotions. Missis Doris seemed eager to clear the air and explain her recent actions more thoroughly. First off, I really must apologise, Missis Doris began, her voice sincere as she clasped her hands around her coffee mug. I didn't think my little visits would cause such a stir. Willie, you know I've always been a bit of a neat freak. Willie chuckled, nodding. Yeah, Mum, I know. But why all the secrecy? Why not just tell us you were coming by? Missis Doris sighed, a hint of embarrassment colouring her cheeks. Well, I wanted it to be a surprise. I know how busy you both are, and I thought I'd help out by cleaning up a bit, maybe do a few loads of laundry, nothing major. And the hair, Danielle asked, still trying to piece everything together. The hair, Missis Doris laughed softly, touching her new dark locks. This was a spur-of-the-moment decision. I saw it on one of those makeover shows and thought, why not? I guess I didn't consider the shedding. It's quite a change from my usual style, and it seems to be falling out more than my old colour ever did. Danielle nodded, feeling a mix of amusement and disbelief. It certainly was a surprise. I really am sorry, dear. I should have considered how it might look, especially since I was here when you weren't. Missis Doris continued, her tone apologetic. It was thoughtless of me. It's okay, Missis Doris, Danielle reassured her, feeling the tension dissipate. We're just glad to know what happened. It was just a big misunderstanding. Willie reached over and squeezed his mother's hand. Yeah, Mum, we appreciate the help, really. Just maybe give us a heads up next time. Absolutely, Missis Doris promised, nodding emphatically. No more surprises. Well, at least not this kind of surprise. They all shared a laugh, the earlier tension melting away into the warmth of the kitchen and the smell of coffee. Danielle felt a weight lift off her shoulders, the relief palpable. So no more secret cleaning sessions. Okay, Willie said, his tone light but firm. No more, Missis Doris agreed, raising her mug in a mock toast. Next time I'll invite myself over for dinner instead. And maybe I'll go back to my old hair colour. This one's too much drama for me. They continued chatting about less weighty matters, Missis Doris sharing stories of her recent adventures in volunteering and Danielle and Willie talking about work and friends. The normalcy was a balm, smoothing over the rough edges of the past few days. As Missis Doris prepared to leave, she hugged Danielle tightly. Thank you for being understanding, dear. You're family, and I didn't mean to cause any strife. Danielle hugged her back, genuinely smiling now. It's all forgiven, really. We're just happy we can put it behind us. With that, Missis Doris left, leaving Danielle and Willie in a much lighter space than they had been for days. They looked at each other, a mutual sense of relief and restored trust between them. Well, that was something, Willie said, wrapping an arm around Danielle's shoulders. Definitely something, Danielle agreed, leaning into him. Let's just hope for less dramatic surprises in the future. They shared a knowing look, the ordeal finally behind them, their bond a little stronger for having weathered the storm together. After Missis Doris left, Danielle and Willie sat back at their kitchen table, the morning's events slowly settling into a new, calmer reality. They sipped their coffee, enjoying a rare moment of quiet together. You know, Willie began, his voice reflective, this whole crazy situation made me realize just how easy it is for things to get out of hand when we don't communicate properly. Danielle nodded, her fingers tracing the rim of her coffee mug. Yeah, I agree. It's scary to think how quickly I jumped to the worst conclusions. I mean, finding those hairs really shook me up. Willie reached across the table, taking her hand in his. I know, babe, and I'm sorry I wasn't more open about Mum coming over. I guess I didn't think it was a big deal at the time. It's not just about your mum, Willie. It's about us, too, Danielle said, her eyes meeting his earnestly. We need to make sure we're not just sharing the same space, but actually sharing what's going on with us, you know. Absolutely, Willie agreed. I don't want us to have secrets, even if they're not really secrets but just overlooked details. We've got to trust each other completely. And trust isn't just about fidelity, it's about being open, even with the small stuff. Like your mum's visits or how we're really feeling day to day, Danielle added, feeling the depth of their conversation shaping a stronger foundation for their relationship. Willie nodded. So how about we make a pact? From now on, no matter how small or big something is, we talk about it. No assumptions, no holding back. I like that, Danielle smiled, squeezing his hand. A no-holds-barred, open-book policy. Exactly, Willie smiled back. And hey, let's promise to never let things build up to the point where one strand of hair can make us question everything we have. Deal, Danielle laughed, the lightness returning to her heart. But let's also keep your mum in the loop about this pact, so she doesn't accidentally test our resolve again with another surprise makeover. First thing we'll do is get her on a group text with us. No more secret cleanups, Missis Doris. Willie chuckled, mimicking typing on his phone. Their laughter filled the kitchen, echoing off the walls and replacing the echoes of doubt and confusion with promises of openness and understanding. As they cleared the table together, the ease between them felt restored. They talked about their day ahead, the mundane plans now tinged with the warmth of renewed connection. Later, as Willie left for work, he turned at the door. I love you, Danny, more than ever. I love you too, Danielle replied, her heart full. See you tonight. Watching him go, she felt a profound gratitude for the resolution of their misunderstandings. Yes, they had faced a challenge, but it had steered them towards stronger, more open communication. Danielle knew that whatever lay ahead, they were better equipped to face it together, with honesty and trust as their guiding principles. Several weeks had passed since the incident with the black hairs, and life for Danielle and Willie had settled into a comforting rhythm marked by their new pact of openness. On a bright Saturday morning, they were in their kitchen, preparing breakfast together, a routine that had become their new favorite way to start the weekend. Danielle was at the stove flipping pancakes, while Willie was beside her, chopping fruit for a salad. The morning was filled with light, both from the sun streaming through their windows and from the laughter they shared over the little anecdotes from their week. You know, Danielle said, as she transferred another golden pancake onto a growing stack, I've been thinking a lot about how everything unfolded that week. It's funny, isn't it? How such a small thing can cause such a big stir. Willie nodded, adding strawberries to the bowl of fruit. It really is. But you know what? I think it was a wake-up call for us. We've been better than ever these past few weeks, just talking things out, keeping no secrets. Danielle smiled, glancing over at him. Yeah, it's been great. I feel like I can tell you anything, no matter how small. And Mum has been keeping us in the loop too, which is, honestly, it's hilarious and wonderful. Yeah, her weekly updates are something else. Willie laughed. I never thought I'd need to know every detail of her garden club disputes, but here we are. Their laughter filled the kitchen, easy and genuine. Willie walked over to her, wrapping an arm around her waist and peering at the pancakes. Those look perfect, babe. Just about done here, Danielle confirmed, turning off the stove. You know, I was really scared back then. I was afraid of losing us, but now I think we're stronger than ever. We are, Willie agreed, kissing her forehead. And it's because we faced that fear together. We didn't let it drive us apart, we let it bring us closer. I think that's pretty incredible. It is, Danielle said, leaning into him. And I love you so much more for it. I love you too, Danny. More and more each day, Willie smiled, squeezing her closer for a moment before releasing her to set the table. As they sat down to enjoy their breakfast, the lightness between them felt like a new beginning. They chatted about plans for the rest of the day, the upcoming week, and small things they looked forward to sharing. It wasn't just the big declarations of love that filled their days now, but the quiet, everyday moments that they no longer took for granted. Later, sipping coffee after the meal, Danielle reflected aloud, "This all taught me something important." "What's that?" Willie asked, curious. "That trust isn't just built on avoiding mistakes or never having misunderstandings. It's built on how we handle them, how we forgive and strive to understand each other better." Willie nodded, taking a hand across the table. "Here's to handling all of life's little challenges together. Just like this, with pancakes and love." "Pancakes and love," Danielle echoed, her smile as warm as the morning sun. "Perfect." And as they sat there, the world outside bustling with its usual pace, Danielle and Willie found themselves not just recovering from a crisis, but thriving in its aftermath, their bond deepened and their commitment to each other renewed. In that kitchen, filled with the aroma of pancakes and fresh fruit, they celebrated their own new dawn, brighter and more promising than ever. Let us know in the comments how this story has inspired you, or share your own experiences of overcoming adversity. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more heart-touching stories like this one. Hit the bell icon to stay updated with our latest uploads. Your journey through the complexities of the human heart starts now. Remember, your story isn't over yet. It's just a new chapter beginning. Stay strong, stay inspired.